What's up, everyone? This is Zach with the Libertarian Party of Nebraska, and we have a very special guest for this particular video, Arvin Vohra. He is the vice chair of the Libertarian National Committee. So that makes you the second highest libertarian in the, not the elected sphere, but the inner party working sphere, correct?
I'm the second highest on the Libertarian National Committee.
Okay.
And the way the committee is structured is you have the committee that makes the high-level decisions, and then you have the staff run by the executive director that carries out those high-level decisions on a day-to-day basis.
Okay. So you are the incumbent, because this is the series where we're talking to all of the people running for vice chair. You're the incumbent. So
yeah, that's a dangerous name there. that's not a positive word with libertarians, but yeah, in a technical sense, I am the incumbent.
I mean, you were the vice chair that oversaw one of our best elections ever. So the best election we've ever had.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's got to stand for something. So can you tell us kind of the nuts and bolts as to what the vice chair in the LNC does?
Sure. The most important thing that the vice chair does is media appearances, media responses. And the key thing about it is you really have to be ready just anytime, because opportunities often strike at moments that you're not really expecting it to. There have been times where I've been out with friends, there have been times when I've been out on a date and I get a call for the possibility of a media interview. And so I've just gotten used to always being ready for that. So that's the most important thing. It's media outreach. It's talking to people. I'll do as vice chair, whoever the vice chair is, will reach more people in a single 4-minute media segment than you will at all. I've worked at many booths. At all the booths combined, spending hours talking to people, I've probably reached like 100th as many people as from just one of those media appearances. Part of that means you also have to be ready to handle the kind of questions that come at you. And you have to be able to keep a libertarian message on point at that time. So you will be often grilled, ask the same question 20 different ways, and you need to be able to make sure you're presenting a clear and consistent libertarian message. If you slip up, what that means is they will jump on the least libertarian part of whatever you say and spread that around. And that happens to great candidates. Even Gary Johnson is probably best known for the fair tax, which is the least libertarian thing in his platform. Everything else in his platform is more libertarian, and that's basically with the stuff that the media ignored. So media outreach is the most important thing that the vice chair does.
Okay, so the media outreach is something that I haven't heard a lot of the other candidates talk as much about. Do you feel that that's your strength? Is your ability to deal with the media?
I do. It's something that I enjoy a lot. I'm physically in DC, so that helps. Although nowadays it probably helps. It's not as big a deal because there's so much remote. There's so many remote sites set up for so you can really do it from anywhere. But being in DC does help a little bit with that. I like doing it. I think it's a very important and valuable thing that we do. The number of people that we reach through that, getting them ideas about what libertarianism is about, how to phrase things. How can we talk about some of the, more difficult to understand ideas of libertarianism? How do we talk about ending public schools on a mainstream media thing? How do we talk about bringing down military overreach on a mainstream media thing? How do we talk about legalizing everything? Completely ending the drug war. How do we talk about that in a way that's both libertarian and also comprehensible, but in some ways is something that people can understand, that they can connect to? And it's not that easy, but I think it's a skill that I think anyone who's willing to work at it can learn.
Okay. So that was just kind of you were talking about that and it was interesting to me. I want to back up a bit.
Okay.
You have been the vice chair during our most successful year, I would say, in the party's history. Mm-hmm. What are you most proud of as something that you kind of took the lead on, something that you spearheaded? What are you most proud of?
So I've been vice chair for 2 terms. During my first term, some of the things that I spearheaded were the logo redesign. In my previous term as a representative at large, I did a lot to change the way that we use social media from something that was basically non-existent to something that's much more dynamic and active. In this term as vice chair, I think some of the most important things that I've done is to help refine our media outreach, our media messaging in ways that are clear and are reaching out to people who didn't know that the Libertarian Party was fighting for them. And so often I've had reporters talk to me afterwards that said, I had never even thought about the idea of completely ending government schools, but a lot of the things that you say there make a lot more sense than I anticipated. Then I've also had the opportunity to reach out to many people who are 100% on board with our most hardcore messaging, but didn't know that we believe that. So many people in the homeschool community, and we're talking about 3 million homeschoolers, God knows how many million former homeschoolers, their parents, they are all about getting the government out of education. They just didn't know we were about getting the government out of education. And so a lot of that outreach has been really rewarding for me. I think in terms of the most beneficial things that I've done, that are very kind of obvious, in addition to just the regular day-to-day things, have really been related to getting our message out there on the media, talking to folks ranging from RT, Fox, MSNBC, and each of those reaching out to just many people. I've had people who are on vacation, friends of mine who are on vacation, that just happened to turn on the TV and saw me in a different country talking about the hardcore ideas of libertarianism. And that is extremely important for us as we become not just a party, but an ideology, a global movement. And I think that's really where I've done the most good, is reaching out to such a huge number of people with such a completely hardcore libertarian message.
So that's really cool. My fiance and I were both homeschooled, and we'll be homeschooling our children when we have them.
Nice.
So
Nice.
That's something that we're very passionate about. So all the other candidates have talked about things that they want to do. And I'm sure because you're still running for this position, there's more you want to accomplish.
Absolutely.
What's your biggest goal? If let's say you win your renomination, whatever they would call it.
Sure.
You win. What's your biggest goal during your next term?
This last term, I've learned so much. I've learned so much good, and I've learned a lot of bad. I've learned, the good things that we've been doing, and some of the things that I thought were really good, but I realized that, that now that I may have been over happy with some of the news. A lot of people, advisors of mine, friends of mine, have said things like, a lot of the growth that you guys have seen, policy and whatever, is not really about freedom. It's about marijuana. And people like to smoke weed. And when you guys talk about weed, they like you because they like weed. But they are not as on board with your core libertarian ideas as you think they are. And me being an optimist, I'm like, no, it's fine. They totally get it. They understand all these things. Now, over the last couple of years, I have realized that I was probably a little bit more optimistic in not fully embracing the fact, not fully understanding the fact that our core libertarian values are poorly understood by most people, or not even known by most people. They are on a losing side of a culture war with most people. They haven't connected with the people who would most naturally connect with them. And I think that is a direct consequence of sort of self-silencing. Right now, I see more truth about the true message of libertarianism. Right now, I see more truth coming out from our opponents, from the opponents of the libertarian movement, have been more honest about who we are than ourselves, than we have been. And I'm guilty of this too. And over the last, several months, I've tried to do things differently and be much more open and be much more clear and be much more forthright and be very clear about true libertarian policies. But if you want to see who's saying things like libertarians want to get government out of education, It isn't libertarians. It is the opponents of liberty who said libertarians are just people that want to end government schools, or as they call them, public schools, or libertarians are just people who want to end welfare. They're the ones who are saying that. We should be saying that. We should be proud of that. We should be reaching out to so many people. Our enemies, our opponents should not be spreading our message more clearly than we do. And so what I would like to do in continuing in this term, of course, and you know, if I have the honor to be reelected to this position in the next term, is to really clearly, boldly do outreach so that people either like us or hate us for the right reasons. And if they're saying, listen, I love government schools, fine, you can like them, but we are probably not going to be the people to support you. All the people who are our natural allies, who don't even know that we support them because we've been so busy talking about, you know, soda taxes and hemp, those people will, you know, if you know, I'm going to do my best in this term, certainly, will be the ones who will form, I believe, a strong center of a real libertarian movement that can grow, that can be built upon. I think we have built a house of straw for too long. I think we need this movement to be a house of brick, with people who deeply and fundamentally believe in the big parts of libertarianism, not just soda taxes and hemp, getting government out of education, massively reducing military overreach, using military for defense only and nothing else of any kind, getting rid of Social Security, ending all welfare, ending Medicare and Medicaid. And I get that there's a lot of opponents to that, and that's fine. That's what politics is. There are supposed to be opponents. And so that is what I want to do, make sure that people know where libertarians stand and attract our actual natural allies and grow this movement the way it should be grown.
So I was trolling through the internet today, as I am wont to do, and there was apparently the Libertarian Party of Ohio had a post about how libraries are socialized, like a socialized book club or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it said. Mm-hmm. And they had a lot of pushback from their followers about how great libraries are. Mm-hmm. And like, I'm probably a lot more like, my coin of phrase is pragmatist in the streets, radical in the sheets. That's kind of who I am.
Nice.
That blew my mind that there are libertarians that are advocating libraries.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, in terms of the actual issue, yeah, I do not believe there should be any government libraries in the world at all. And certainly not in the United States, but I don't think there should be any anywhere. And one of the things that I hope to be able to do with media outreach is if that issue ever comes up, I want people in America, in Italy, in every part of the world, in Canada, South America, and in Africa, everywhere, to be like, yeah, we don't need government libraries. We have Project Gutenberg online. We have so many options. Why should we let government use this thing to kind of make us forget what they really do? Why should we let them do that? So I absolutely, on the surface level, 100% I agree with that. But that is the issue that I'm seeing across this movement, is that we have a lot of people who believe libertarianism is just like this sort of kind of eccentric, overly logical college professorial niceness. And that's not what libertarianism is. It is defunding and dismantling the state. That's what it is. And we see so many people where they will support any libertarian position except for the ones that involve taking anything away from anyone that that person didn't rightly earn. So they're saying, fine, we can legalize hemp because no one's really losing. And if they find out that, yeah, there are actually some competitors who might be losing, well, we'll give them a subsidy. But we can't get rid of government schools because people use them. And we can't get rid of this other thing because people like that. And we can't get rid of this other thing because it's seen as uprighteous. That's the problem. There is no real politics without having that culture war. That culture war that says government work is bad. It is not a good choice. It is a compromise. Sometimes you have to do it, and sometimes you have to steal. And there are times where you take a government job to feed your family. And there might be times when you steal to feed your family. But you don't go around bragging about a government job. And we as libertarians should not be go around pretending that that is a good thing to do. It is not ever a good thing to do. The same thing is true with government schools. There may be a time where out of desperation you might turn to them, but to say that it's good is failing to have the necessary culture war that is the center of this movement. And so we need to get to that point where it's not just about policy, where we need to be able to say government is bad, all of it, especially the parts that are, quote, popular, especially the parts that are prettified, especially the parts that are glorified. We need to smack the glory out of those things. We need people to say, this is not good. This is not what we want to aspire towards. Maybe it's a short-term compromise, but it's not a thing to glory in. And that's what I want to see change. And yeah, libraries are an example. And just in case anybody's curious, that's also my view of NASA, is my view of government schools, is my view of any of the sentimentalized part of government. They should all go, and I will do everything I can to make sure that they are devalued culturally and shut down politically.
So you've brought up the culture war several times.
Mm-hmm.
You're right, we're losing badly. It feels like, and this is me listening to podcasts and YouTube videos for 8 hours a day, the war is being fought between two separate socialist ideologies, and
Mm-hmm.
we're kind of in the corner not wanting either side to win. How do we get more skin in the game? And what do we have to do to turn that back a little bit and become a bigger force in this war?
We are losing this war at the moment because we are not entering the war. We are losing the war because we are preemptively giving up. We're saying, man, people really like government schools. I want them to like me, so I'm not going to fight against government schools. If we don't fight against government schools, if we don't fight that cultural war, if we don't say, listen, government schools are bad, their existence is bad, an individual choice to use them is bad, an individual choice to work there is bad, everything about them is bad because government has no business involved in education. If we can't say that, then we can't win that debate. You know, the common wisdom is that libertarians have been winning arguments and losing elections for 40 years, something like that. But that's not true. Libertarians have been avoiding arguments and losing elections for 40 years. I think it's time for us to stop avoiding the arguments. I think it is perfectly fine to go with the hardcore libertarian messaging. And one reason that I believe that is the person who has, even though she didn't like the Libertarian Party, has brought more people to libertarian ideas than almost anybody else, which is Ayn Rand, who puts forth at her opening step of her ideology is that taxation is theft. She doesn't warm people up to it. She goes to the most hardcore thing and look at the size of that movement that she generated. Imagine if instead she said, taxation is kind of bad, but government schools are good and working for the government is good. And all. No, she put pictures that like working, that people who are involved in the government are mostly bad, or at least they're doing something bad. People who are engaged in private enterprise, they're doing more good. See, that type of culture war works. It has worked. It's what the Democrats and Republicans, interestingly, do. They fight those culture wars. We need to fight those culture wars. And here's the great thing about a culture war is even when you lose, you still kind of win. Because losing just means you didn't convince every single person, but you convinced some of them. And when you go around angering maybe some people, if you're bringing more people to our side, especially people who are actual libertarians who actually believe in this ideology, that is a huge benefit. So in short, yes, I absolutely do believe that we need to fight and win, or just continue to at least fight the culture war instead of avoiding it the way we've been doing for too long.
All right. Well, that's about everything I've got. Do you have any final thoughts, anything you want to leave us with?
Sure. When it comes down to, this position, you're going to have to ask, what is it that the Libertarian Party needs to be doing? There's a lot of people that say we need to go around being nice to statists. If that's what you believe, I'm not your guy, because I'm not going to be, I'm civil to anybody I talk to. I'm very polite to people who I talk to, but I'm not going to avoid a culture war because we can't win any of this without the culture war. We can win small elections that no one cares about or understands, but until we engage in this culture war, liberty cannot come to America. Until we can say public schools are bad, not sentimentally glorious, libertarianism cannot come to America. Unless we can start to say that defense is fine, but what this military is doing at this time is anything but defense, and sentimentalizing this kind of abusive overreach is damaging the people in it and damaging the people outside of it. Until we can say that, we cannot win this culture war. This is a position that requires a tremendous amount of honesty. It requires a tremendous amount of integrity, and it requires you to be able to take a large amount of flack. and it requires that kind of state of constant readiness. And whoever becomes the next vice chair, I really, really hope that they embrace this idea of fighting for our actual values, not hemming and hawing or beating around the bush, but to actually fight the things that matter.
All right, that was a really good speech.
I also appreciate that.
So this has been Arvin Vohra. He's running for vice chair of the LNC. I'm Zach Taylor. Have a great week, Nebraska.
Thanks for